Okay. Wednesday edition of the After Show. Got Wink and Justice with you. Wink over here on the East Coast.
And Justice over here on the west coast of the contiguous United States of America. It is Wednesday's Child is full of whoa Wednesdays. Yes. And whoa, Skype freezing up on us here. Sorry about that slight delay, but when it has anything to do, any problems have to do with the internet, we call that, when a problem arises, we call that an act of God.
Yeah.
So, beyond our control. Well, it is Wednesday's Child is full of woe. And Wink, how are you doing?
Not bad. It is mostly sunny and 68 degrees out there, going up to about 75 today. So it's going to be a nice day, nice spring day. And it's nice to get into kind of baseball weather, I guess you'd say. Mind to get in the chat, just go to netrootsradio.com, scroll down the bottom of the page, and on the right-hand side of the bottom of the page, there is a link to the chat. So click that, join us there.
And of course, since, that Soros check is still in the mail, we have a couple of donate contribute buttons to the leftish of the chat room link. And thank you for attending to that. The resistance, let's just say they charge us to be the resistance.
Yeah.
Ooh, boy. Well, here along the banks of the Rogue River, in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon, it is currently 58 degrees. We're going to be much cooler today, Wink. We're only going to go up to 80.
Ah, okay.
Now, it was in the mid to upper 90s the last couple of days, so this will be pleasant weather now. Of course, they, meaning the town I live in, will be laying some asphalt shortly, and there's nothing better to foul the air than hot asphalt on a spring day.
Oh, yeah.
So, you ever work on a road crew, Wink, in your
Never did, but I've worked near them when, I was working in a situation where they were really close by, like 10 feet away,
Yeah,
But,
well, then that's sort of like being, on the road crew. Except
then
you have to ride the truck back to the yard.
Oh, yeah.
Boy.
Not easy work.
Yeah, I thought, I wanted to get as much experience in as many jobs as possible, and I did.
Yeah.
And in the process learned, well, maybe I don't want to do that particular job for very long.
Right, for very long anyway, yeah.
Oh, after show pods can also be had shortly after the end of the show by way of Spreaker. That's the raw data file. And then the perfected daily file will be coming a bit later. We call it the PDF. Will be coming a bit later by way of Podbean, iTunes, TuneIn, Spreaker. No, I'm sorry, Stitcher, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Wherever quality pods can be had.
That one with the heart, if you so dare, yeah. The
Trump got to the Vatican, and the Pope's not too happy. Because you don't know the effort it takes after Satan's emissary meets God's emissary on earth.
Right.
I mean, they can't just use sage. Oh man, they bring out the frankincense and myrrh. Then they gotta have like some really, really old type of Latin type of incantations in which to drive the sulfur smell out.
Right.
So he wasn't very happy. Really sad. And oh God. And then Melania and Ivanka look like a couple of Italian widows. I don't know if you saw the picture yet, Wink, but they're wearing black.
Yeah.
They're wearing black. They're wearing veils, which is a bit odd since Vatican II, which was in the 60s with Pope John, way back.
Yep.
It wasn't required to do that. And but, of course, there are some who are more conservative, like Opus Dei.
Yeah.
Or some people call it Opus Dei. I call them Opus Dei. And they like that. Now, I have to admit, I'm not Opus Dei, but I love the Latin Mass.
Yeah.
There's something about the incantation in Latin. I mean, it's a bit like a mantra. So in that sense, the musicality of it is intoxicating, and I like the Latin Mass.
Yeah.
And but all the other things, like women got to wear, they got to cover their heads, and women have to sit over here and men over there. And after Vatican II, I mean, we got the guitar mass. Come on, I love the guitar mass. That was kind of fun. Yeah. They should do the guitar mass in Latin.
Exactly.
That would be fine. But yeah, I don't know what they were thinking. Maybe they weren't. But I don't know. I think there's a bit more strategy involved here than meets the eye. We like to think it's just incompetence, but I also think it's a thumb in the eye of this Pope because of his liberal policies. Supposed liberal policies, because they seem rather centrist and mainstream, or I don't know, going back to the core mission statement of attending to the poor, the infirm, to the downtrodden, right? So I don't know.
Yeah,
Trump thinks he can get the camel through the eye of a needle. He's the great negotiator. Speaking of great negotiator. I thought that
picture looked like from the Addams Family or something. The ladies.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I guess.
Yeah, man.
It looked to me like a scene out of The Godfather. There was Connie, and her dead husband. And, that may happen soon. And then the widow of Don Corleone.
Yeah.
Which you never know.
It was a weird photo.
But I was going to say, speaking of great negotiator, he left Israel without any arms deal. I mean, he gave how many hundreds of billions to the Saudis, but nothing to the Israelis except, oh yeah, we exposed your spy. How do you like them apples, huh? Huh? Great negotiator. Now I wonder, once again, is that on purpose? Probably is. Well, it's Wednesday, so we should get on it since we got a little bit of a late start today. These are the issues we will be attending to. They are, after being continually rebuffed by federal courts, the Texas House approves an even more restrictive voter ID law. Really? Equality? We don't need your stinking equality. The FBI and Defense Department are investigating America's largest psychiatric hospital chain for holding patients longer than medically necessary to maximize profits. I don't know. Don't they all do that? And I guess it wasn't on pallets. The U.S. Army lost track of where they put $1 billion in weapons and arms transfers in Iraq and Kuwait. Oops. You always hate getting killed by your own guns, It's like, how'd that happen? Well, remember that $1 billion in cash on pallets that got lost? Where'd that go? Kind of makes you wonder where these weapons went to, eh? Expose an Israeli spy among ISIS, and then lose $1 billion in arms.
Yeah.
What does that mean? Well, as I prefaced earlier, we are visiting with Angela Marx, always affectionately known still as Angie in Washington State, for Political and World News Roundup, because there's so much news that comes up, it's hard to pin it down by the time she comes on, because something new will arise. All that, plus the Connect, Unite, Act, Daily Coast community calendar, and more on the after show. Excuse me. With that ever so fine fellow over there on the East Coast, and his name is Wink, and this guy back over here on the West Coast, my name is Justice. We do this 5 days a week for an hour-ish in this particular specific and peculiar tear in the fabric of space-time, because, truly, who loves your baby? Because we do. We're not like the Republicans where they just hate. Everything's predicated upon, somebody's trying to steal something from me.
Right.
We come from a position of love. And we would hope in some ways that it's unconditional. You know what unconditional means? That we give it without the idea that we're going to get it in return. Because what then is love?
Yeah.
Okay. So, I don't know. Maybe I keep mentioning I'm a romantic, I really took seriously the teachings when I was a young Catholic kid, altar boy, of helping those that were the least among us. That was really a mission to attend to, because if we don't take care of those that are the least among us, how do the rest of us get down the path? I don't know. You can turn it into a selfish concern. If you don't help the slow person keep up, then, you don't advance yourself. Of course, on the other side, what they would say is like, they're holding me back. Let's cut them loose. Which brings me to Mick Mulvaney. Isn't he a evil, you know what? God. This guy. You know who Mick Mulvaney is, right? He's the budget director, and he's the one out there saying, oh, yeah, we're going to cut $800 billion from Medicaid. We're going to cut this much from, agriculture, farm, food stamps, or whatever they call it now.
SNAP, yeah, that's SNAP.
SNAP.
Yeah.
And essentially, he says, look, you can't. This is the height of what compassion is. That everybody talks about being compassionate about people who are sick, people who are poor, people who can't help themselves. Everybody wants to have compassion for them, but nobody has compassion for the rich guy. And that's wrong. So he's just showing compassion for, the rich guys, because they get short shrift. They have everything that they can get their hands on, and apparently that's not enough. It's not. Texas. Okay, let's get on it. Texas. I have relatives in Texas. It's not like I hate Texas. It's just that, I don't know. There's something peculiar. It must be in the water. This is an article out of Reuters by John Herskowitz. The Texas House of Representatives gave preliminary approval yesterday to a new bill on showing identification when voting after a previous voter ID law was struck down by U.S. courts, which said it discriminated against Black and Hispanic people. So I guess the workaround is that, then we'll just keep everybody from voting. Are you happy now? Let's see how this works out. The measure, called Senate Bill 5, is intended to remedy flaws found by courts in the previous Republican-backed law. It allows people who cannot produce an authorized photo ID to show other documentation, such as a utility bill or a bank statement, and sign an affidavit stating that they had a reasonable impediment in presenting an authorized ID. You mean like closing down DMVs? But a driver's license is what you need? Or you could show your concealed weapons permit. That's okay. Student ID? Nah, not good. Critics contend the measure, backed by the Republican-dominated lawmakers, will still exclude ethnic minorities who tend to support Democrats, and imposes harsh penalties of up to 10 years in prison for lying on an affidavit. You're trying to vote? You want to risk a 10-year sentence by voting? What do you think this is, America? This is Texas. Wow. Texas is the most populous Republican-controlled state. For more than 20 years, the party has won every statewide race for offices, such as governor or U.S. senator, but shifting demographics have given hopes to Democrats that they can one day turn the state to their column, which would alter the U.S. political landscape. And I think people in the Federalist Society, ALEC, Koch brothers, and maybe the Kremlin don't want that to happen. The original voter ID measure was signed into law in 2011 by then Texas Governor Rick Perry, a Republican. It was considered one of the nation's strictest and has been subject to years of court challenges, with the law's opponents saying it could exclude up to 600,000 voters. In January, the U.S. Supreme Court declined to hear an appeal by Texas seeking to revive the state's strict Republican-backed voter identification requirements. Critics had said the Texas law and similar statutes enacted in other Republican-governed states were tailored to make it harder for minorities, including Black and Hispanic voters, who were less likely to have the authorized IDs. Backers of these laws have said they are necessary to prevent voter fraud, despite no evidence of voter fraud. And you know what's funny is that when we do have voter fraud, it's like Trump supporters who wanted to vote once, twice, 3 or 4 times because, hey, it's their guy.
Right.
They have to balance out the other votes that are coming on the other side. Isn't that how it works?
Indeed.
Both the previous law and the measure in the Texas legislature listed authorized photo IDs to include a driver's license, a U.S. military ID, a U.S. passport, and a Texas concealed handgun license. I don't know. If it was me, because I kind of like to shake things up, for my voter drive effort, I would probably try to go into Black and Hispanic communities and get everybody a concealed weapons permit and see how that goes. yeah, they'll keep they'll have gun restrictions then, won't they? Yes, they would. The Texas Senate approved SB 5 in March, and yesterday the State House of Representatives preliminarily approved the measure. Final votes on the bill may be held today. And Texas used a similar system, as outlined in the bill, in the 2016 election after being ordered by a federal court to weaken its voter ID law. And they said, nah, we'll keep it the same. We'll make it a little bit more restrictive. Screw you. I don't know. America. Well, this sounds like, I don't know, a business model that, I don't know. Have we suspected this going on, not just in psychiatric hospitals, but others, possibly? Isn't this what they call Medicare fraud? You know, when they talk about Medicare fraud, it's like, you know, an individual getting on Medicare that isn't supposed to be. I mean, that's how the Republicans present the idea of Medicare fraud. When it's like big hospital chains cheating the government. This is out of BuzzFeed by Rosalind Adams and Cora Lewis. America's largest chain of psychiatric hospitals is the target of a multi-agency federal investigation into whether it systematically holds patients longer than necessary to maximize revenues. An allegation 2 nurses at one of its facilities raised following a protest at its headquarters last week. Don't mess around with labor, and if the labor are nurses, you better watch out. According to 3 sources with direct knowledge of the investigation, officials are examining whether Universal Health Services directs its hospitals to hold patients for as many days as their insurer agrees to pay for, regardless of actual medical need. The probe has been ongoing since at least 2013, when the Department of Health and Human Services issued subpoenas to 10 of United Health Services psychiatric hospitals. Officials working on the current investigation continue to seek witnesses to any alleged fraudulent activity. Putting together a successful prosecution will require testimony of patients, intake coordinators, nurses, social workers, providers, and executives, said one agent on the case. The allegations against the company were raised during its shareholder meeting last week, both by the nurses who protested outside the event and by an investor in the room. The New York City Comptroller's Office, representing pension funds that own more than $25 million in UHS stock, cited ongoing investigations into the company when calling for it to abandon its shareholder voting system. An investment group from For the Union Coalition, Change to Win also voiced similar governance concerns in a 12-page letter to shareholders before the meeting. Wow, they're trying to keep the shareholders from voting on this stuff. What? Okay, well, the proposal was rejected by more than 90% of votes cast. As the shareholder meeting proceeded, nurses from a nearby UHS-owned facility in Pennsylvania staged a protest outside, complaining of issues including understaffing and unsafe working conditions. A recent OSHA citation found its workers are exposed to serious physical injuries such as from bites, bruises, strains, sprains, and underscored the employees' concerns. 2 nurses at the facility said they had direct experience with company holding patients longer than necessary to collect higher insurance payments. They recalled telling doctors that patients were safe to be charged, but that the doctors would ask when their last covered day was, the last day Medicare, Medicaid, or their private insurance would pay for, and discharge them then, regardless of their condition. Well, an FBI spokesman declined to confirm or deny the investigation, but said that, in general, the Bureau actively pursues allegations that hospitals admit or hold patients who do not need treatment in order to maximize profits. Don't mess with nurses, wink. Do not.
They're a tough bunch. No doubt about that.
Well, in many ways, they know more than the doctor. That's why they're there. This next article is out in Newsweek by nobody. Oh, here we go. Michelle Gorman. The U.S. Army failed to properly monitor more than $1 billion worth of arms transfers in Iraq and Kuwait, according to a declassified government audit obtained by Amnesty International and released today. Uh-oh. The audit provides a worrying insight into the U.S. Army's flawed and potentially dangerous system for controlling millions of dollars worth of arms transfers to a hugely volatile region, Patrick Wilkin, Amnesty International's arms control and human rights researcher, said in a statement. I don't know. There's like some arms merchants in the U.S. Army right now going, these damn liberal hippies. We had a good thing going until they stepped in. Because isn't this, in a way, the strategy that the U.S. Army has pretty much utilized since we became a country, maybe even before? And what is that? Is that, you put people in danger, civilians. They become attacked. So then you have to build a fort, right? And then things die down and you go, well, we're not getting anywhere with just peace. And so you kind of push arms outside beyond the boundaries of the fort, like west. And then put a bunch of settlers out there, get them attacked with weapons that you somehow lost, or in some cases sold on the black market, right? So then you got to build a fort, protect those people, keep moving on, leapfrog to the next one. So I don't know. Let ISIS have a bunch of weapons. That way we have conflict and we can keep a good thing going.
Hell yeah.
In this reporter's opinion, of course. Amnesty obtained the documents through a Freedom of Information Law request. I guess we're going to get rid of those.
Yeah.
The group's research documents The group's research documents lax controls and record keeping within the Iraqi chain of command, which has resulted in arms manufactured in the U.S. winding up in the hands of armed groups known to be committing war crimes and other atrocities, such as the Islamic State. In response to the audit, the U.S. military has pledged to tighten its system for tracking and monitoring future transfers to Iraq. Okay, good. Well, what about the ones you lost already? Can we get those back? Can you find them? The U.S. Department of Defense audit from September of 2016 shows that the Department of Defense did not have accurate, up-to-date records on the quantity and location of equipment pouring into Iraq and Kuwait to supply the Iraqi army and helping to degrade ISIS or ISIL. Or the losers. They're losers, Wink. Radical Islamic losers. The transfers include tens of thousands of assault rifles worth about $28 million, hundreds of mortar rounds, and hundreds of Humvee armored vehicles destined for use by the Central Iraqi Army, which is then selling them to ISIS. Come on, they're just being middlemen, Wink. The Iraqi Army are just middlemen. Let's see. Meanwhile, the Pentagon has overbilled the U.S. military for fuel by almost $6 billion over the past 7 years, and then used money to bolster underfunded and mismanaged defense programs, sort of like what Oliver North did. Earlier, the Federal Government Accountability Office criticized the U.S. for failing to account for thousands of rifles issued to Afghan security forces. The 2009 report said some weapons were documented to be in the hands of insurgents, including during a July 2008 battle in which 9 Americans died. Of course, that was still during the Bush years, so maybe those $1 billion in weapons and arms that they can't find are with the $1 billion in cash on pallets. Follow the money. Isn't that what we should always do, Wayne? All right, let's get to our Jim Hightower break, and then we'll come back, go through the Connect, Unite, Act Daily Codes community calendar, of course, and then we'll have a fairly leisurely conversation with Angie about, well, we'll talk a little bit about the Brennan hearing, but I think we'll also talk a bit about budget and the general destruction of what we consider to be the American ideal. All right, you're listening to the After Show on Netroots Radio with Wink and Justice, and we will be right back.
These are hard times for America's gold miners who are scrambling to get ahead but seeing their pay dropping. Take Bob Mercer, who's been a top miner for years, but last year even Bob was down. He pulled in only $125 million in pay. Can you feel Bob's pain? Well, these are not your normal miners. They are hedge fund managers digging for gold in the wonderland of Wall Street. Indeed, if you divided Mercer's pay in his bad year among 1,000 miners doing honest work, each would consider it a fabulous year. Nonetheless, hedge funds are almost literally gold mines, although they require no heavy lifting by the soft-handed, Gucci-wearing managers who work them. These gold diggers are basically nothing but speculators, drawing billions of dollars from the uber-rich by promising that they will deliver fabulous profits for them. But the scam is that Mercer and his fellow diggers get paid whether they deliver or not. Their cushy setup, known as 2 and 20, works like this. 1, right off the top, they take 2% of the money put up by each wealthy client, which hedge fund whizzes like Mercer keep, even if the investments they make are losers. 2, if their speculative bets do pay off, they pocket 20% of all profits. And 3, hedge fund lobbyists have rigged our nation's tax code so these Wall Street miners pay a fraction of the tax rate that real mine workers pay. This is Jim Hightower saying, last year, the 25 best-paid hedge fund operators totaled a staggering $11 billion in personal pay, even though nearly half of them performed poorly. Meanwhile, Donald Trump, who promised to close that special hedge fund tax break, is now promising to give an even bigger break to them. Guess who was one of Trump's most generous funders last year? Bob Mercer.
Need an antidote to the progressive blues? Want some good news about how grassroots folks are rebelling against the corporate powers and winning? Well, here's an easy-to-swallow pill for you, the Hightower Lowdown. Hightower's monthly newsletter will give you the lowdown, even as it lifts you up. It's 4 pages a month, jam-packed with facts you can use, actions you can take, and Jim's own Texas humor, all for only $15 a year. To become a lowdowner, go to hightowerlowdown.org.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
Okay, we're back.
And indeed, we are back. Thank you for sticking with us. This is the After Show with Wink and Justice. Justice here along the banks of the Rogue River in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the West Coast. Wink is in upstate New York 21 on the East Coast. Angie in Washington State is in Washington State, and of course, that's on the West Coast.
Yeah.
And our crew are the ethereal creatures who reside in the cloud, not the clouds, the cloud.
The cloud.
And whose advanced intergalactic technical abilities allow Netroots Radio, and thus by extension the After Show, to span the globe, the solar system, out past the Oort cloud. And if there's something beyond that, we'll be beyond that too, because hyperbole knows no limits. Not in the era of Trump.
Right.
Okay. Today's Connect Unite Act Daily Coast Community Calendar, or Diary, is facilitated by Forrester Bob, and he begins his diary today with his one-word question: why? Like, what lies beyond billboards? No one knows. And why do we need so many of them? When I was a little kid, back in the day when they didn't really have, I mean, there was interstate, but it was quite a chore to travel across America by car. So we would take a lot of back roads, and you'd see the old Bristol shave signs that were lined up, like every 200 feet, and they'd tell a story while you were driving along.
Yep.
I love that. That was fun.
Great stuff.
Okay, Wisconsin Cossacks have been organizing their group, so Cosmail Chris the Colladem, if you'd like to join Wisconsin Coes. The Epic Glacier National Park Meetup number 3 is occurring this year between June 30th and July 2nd. Thinking Fella and Ojibwa have been organizing that. Very extensive itinerary posted at the diary, so go to the Connect Unite Act Daily Coast Community Diary, and any of them, because you'll scroll down and you'll see that. Very extensive itinerary. It looks like fun. Gets you out of your Winnebago, too, if you're doing that. And the Daily Coast annual Cheers and Jeers dinner at Netroots Nation this year, of course, in Atlanta, will be occurring the night before the official opening of Netroots Nation, and that is Wednesday, August 9th at 5:30 p.m. The location is yet to be determined because it's all the way in August. And there's lots of people already joined. So RSVP with Navajo, and they'll determine the size of the venue. And as it usually happens, Netroots Nation generally gets the largest convention venue, and then the Cheers and Jeers dinner gets the second largest. It's usually how it works. And if you can't get in, I don't know about third-rate karaoke in Atlanta. I haven't been in Atlanta since karaoke became a thing. So all I know is that the third-rate karaoke in Phoenix sucks. So you don't want to miss the Cheers and Jeers dinner. And that is your Connect Unite Act Daily Coast Community Calendar for the 24th of May. Man, we're coming right out of spring, Wink.
Absolutely.
Smack dab coming up into summer. All right. So we are in the last half of the after show, and it being Wednesday, this is the day we visit with Angela Marx, Angie in Washington State. Thank you for being with us again, Angela.
Not a problem.
Well, there's always lots of news. The Brennan hearing, I watched some, but mostly it was from news analysis, and lots to be said about that. But why don't we go into what you called Trump's triple play, about the Senate version of Trump Care already underway, the budget for that is there, no reconciliation bill. What's that all about?
Well, the way that the House decided to write the version of the Trump Care bill was as a reconciliation bill. And that means that unless there is a budget bill first, and that the House writes the bill, the Senate takes it and writes their own bill, and then they have a reconciliation meeting where they combine the two and present a budget to the president to sign, right? Unless they do that first, there's going to be no Trump Care bill, because the way they wrote it is it can only be added during that reconciliation of the budget bill.
Now, I'm curious here, because is this just, do they want this to fail? I mean, how is Mick Mulvaney that much of an idiot that he thought this would get through? Do they have some imperial magical power? I don't understand this.
Well, here's the thing: they broke the nuclear barrier there on the filibuster and the cloture rule for SCOTUS nominees, so they could push that judge on, right? But they left it up for legislative action. So if they didn't put that Trump Care bill in as a reconciliation bill to go into the reconciliation portion of the budget bill, they would have to leave it open to be filibustered. And of course, the Senate Democrats would filibuster it. This is the only way to avoid that 60-vote barrier that they cannot pass because they don't have 60 votes.
I've been reading that, publicly, the GOP is somewhat on board, but privately, they're having a hard time getting Republicans to come on board.
Of course they are, because they're terrified
because they'll be
of
killed. They'll be killed.
They're terrified of losing their seats next year.
Yes, exactly. They'll be politically dead. They won't have a job.
Well, do you remember 2010? All of the big, huge town hall brouhaha that went on across the country in the Democratic town halls because people were so angry about this death pool Obamacare that was going to kill everybody. Right? Do you remember that? Well, the Republicans are getting their version of it this year, brought on by the resistance that was accrued because, we elected Trump president.
Well, before we came back on the air, you had mentioned about, Trump supporters or GOP supporters generally unaware that what they believe to be true is really propaganda. And this is something that is bothersome to me, and I've noticed, and I suspected it was almost a strategy of sorts, because when the Tea Party folks came in and they took over these town halls, of course, they were not grassroots, first of all. They were backed by the Freedom Caucus, the Koch brothers. So, it was a wholly structured faux grassroots movement. And essentially came into these town halls and told a bunch of lies like death panels and Obamacare is going to do this and do that. Now, on our side, let's even go further, the idea that Obama was a secret Muslim. Were there any hearings on that secret Muslim thing, right? But here with the Trump thing, or in the era of Trump, it's almost as if they can use the argument, really what was said in those town halls in the Tea Party weren't necessarily true. It was all hyperbole because we had a political motive. And then they can saddle that kind of uncertainty onto what is the truth. And I get this in my neighborhood. People don't believe the Trump investigation. I mean, the Russian investigation. They don't believe what's being said negatively about the ACHA because
the news
it's all
they watch
fake.
says it's not true, right?
Yeah, it's all fake.
It's there's a fact that very few people, I guess, in this country realize or understand, which is that all of our media, that's television stations, radio stations, newspapers, all of it are owned by 6 corporations. 6. They own every bit of news carrying ability in this country. When only 6 entities own the ability to control all of the news that goes out, what do you think is going to happen?
Right.
I know what I think is going to happen, and it's what did happen, which is there's a corporate iron fist deciding how often to loosen up and let a little truth out. You, as a consumer in this country, you have to be proactive and go out and look for actual news, because the news that you get labeled news is not news anymore. I'm sure that Walter Cronkite and Harry K. Reason are rolling around in their graves.
My particular representative here in Oregon is one of the few Republican representatives in the U.S. Congress from Oregon. And of course, during the net neutrality argument that we've been having, I wrote off a little letter, and I did get a response, but it was rather duplicitous because what Walden said in somewhat of a form letter type of response, I have to say, that, and this is what it said: nothing has changed. You still have the same speed that you have, on your download and upload. Content has not been impacted. But that wasn't what I was concerned about. I'm concerned about what they're doing and what will be, right? What they're trying to do with content and the net. And his argument was, nothing's changed for you. And then I wrote back and said, yeah, nothing's changed yet, but what are you working for? So
Comcast is running ads on on Twitter about the net neutrality issue, saying the same thing, like, nothing's going to change, and you're not going to get we're not going to throttle your speed down. And so the question I keep posting to them every time I see that little bit of theirs on Twitter is, okay, but are you going to sell faster speeds to people willing to pay more?
Right. Well, they're doing it now in spite of it. That's
right.
Another bothersome issue.
That's the point. It's not that they're going to throttle back anybody at the current speed that they're at, but that they're going to give faster speed to data that is willing to pay them more to get on a faster train. It's like first-class seating in airplanes, right? You get better service if you have more money. Well, that shouldn't be true on a utility, which is why the previous chairman of the FCC was finally pushed enough that he did indeed say that Internet service was covered under Title II, just like telephone services, making it a utility, and that means that everybody has to have equal access.
Well, isn't this, I'm going to butcher his name, Pajit Pai? Isn't he instrumental in trying to change that rule from it being a utility?
Yes, because he's the new chairman. He's the chairman that Trump appointed, right? He's what did I read? I'm sure he was a former president of Comcast or something.
Yeah.
I'm sure he was. Right. And of course, the argument from the Republicans on these kind of appointments is that we have to have somebody with experience in the industry in these appointed seats, right? Because you can't oversee an industry you don't know about. That, you can't destroy an industry you don't want to. You can't govern a seat in an agency when your actual purpose is to destroy the service.
This comes to another sort of macro question here, and that is, Trump announced even on this trip that when he gets back, he's going to push to starve Obamacare of funds. Now, isn't there a part of the Constitution and an oath that he took to uphold the laws of the nation? And yet he's appointed people to break the law, essentially destroy departments and bureaucracies. Isn't that let's not get into the impeachable thing, but the idea of upholding the law and then not. I mean, isn't that a consideration in any of this? How can you appoint people whose definite purpose is to deconstruct the agency?
Because federal agencies aren't created by laws. They're created because the president and the executive branch decides he needs that department. Well, if
Obamacare is a law, how can he starve it? I don't see how he has the constitutional authority to be able to starve payments to Medicaid.
Okay. So he's not going to starve payments to Medicaid. He's starving. Well, there was a big brouhaha about it this month, and he actually did authorize payments this month. It's for the CSR, which is compensated. Oh, okay. Well, part of Obamacare told hospitals or told insurers that if they came into the marketplaces and offered these individual plans in states, and because it was a new system, if they didn't charge enough in premiums and they lost too much money because they had more payouts and they had income, the federal government was going to authorize these continuing payments for a period of years so that the system could stabilize out, so the insurers could raise premiums enough in succeeding years so that they wouldn't be in red ink at the end of the year, right? Okay, but these payments, these continuing payments for that issue, are voluntary. The government is able to pay them or not. They're not required to pay them, but they're able to pay them. When it comes to the law, the word shall and may, make a world of difference. Right? So it's that kind of a thing. And the insurance companies, the hospital associations, all kinds of medical community organizations have signed a couple of letters and sent them off to the president and Congress. They're telling them outright in the last 30 days that unless they stop making political hay of this issue and stabilize those payments through the end of next year at least, in 60 days, there could be 11 million people without insurance because insurance companies could just leave states to say, we're done. So that's what's really happening. I've tweeted this a couple times. If you have your hands around my neck and you're strangling me to death, you can't say, she's failing, you're killing me. Right? That's what the Republicans are doing. They're strangling, they're trying to purposely strangle the system to death financially, and at the same time they're doing it with their hands around the neck of the system. They're turning to the camera and smiling widely and saying, look, it's in a death spiral.
Yeah. Now, when the House version of the ACHA came out, most of the assessment in the media was, once it goes to the Senate, it's just going to die there. But it's underway in the Senate, and I see McConnell in cahoots with Ryan in pushing this through. What's your assessment on this?
Well, they didn't take up the House bill. They said, that thing, we can't fix that thing. So they're writing their own bill. And then, of course, they'll come together and they'll hammer out the two differences. Only I'm not sure that there's a hammer big and fat enough to cover all the holes that are going to be left that Democrats can stop it under. I mean, like I said, you're not going to hear a whole lot about the Senate version of that AHCA for a little while at least, because until they pass a budget bill and get ready to go to reconciliation on it, that health care bill has nowhere to go because they can't just run it through legislative process, or the Senate Democrats would and should filibuster it, which would mean a 60-vote cloture vote to get past the filibuster and actually vote on the Senate version of that bill.
Joan McCarter on David Waldman's show today said, forget about President Bannon. It's really President Mulvaney, Budget Director Mulvaney, who, now, of course, just a little background. He is one of the Tea Party types that came in, very virulent. And there's some speculation that a lot of these proposals come directly from him rather than from GOP leadership.
There's only one president. It's that orange mango. Only spent his weekends at Mar-a-Lago. This President Bannon stuff that's in the talking media, right? I would suggest people ignore all of that. That is just, like you said, hyperbole, right? There's one president, but there is a Congress, and there is a Congress which has the Republican Party in the majority in both the Senate and the House, and at least 1/3 of those people are still those Tea Party types that came in the 2010 wave election, and they want to tear things down and obstruct things, and it was painfully obvious in the last 4 years of Obama's administration that they were only about obstructing anything except tax cuts. I mean, it's been more than 40 years now. Ronald Reagan came into office and the tax rate was 70%. When he left, it was 28%. The rich people could not have been happier. They had not seen a tax rate since the 5 years leading up to Black Tuesday and the Great Depression, the beginning of the Great Depression, where it was 25% for the 5 years leading up to that, which, by the way, should be a warning bell to the Republicans that this idea of cutting income taxes in this country down to nothing, basically, is a really bad plan. But, of course, they don't seem to be fans of history.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that they would be happy living behind high walls with a secure gate, maybe a garden front, and not be part of the social fabric and think that the whole countryside is being overrun by brigands. So that's why we have to build these high walls, which is directly counter to what we were as a nation. I mean, every city planner, every town planner since this nation began had open front yards, so that you were a part of the community rather than being separated. And now
it's not even that. Justice, for me, here's the thing. Our country has a southern border, a northern border, and 2 coastlines. Those morons want to build a fence a wall, a fence, whatever you want to call it. They want to build something that's going to cost in the neighborhood of $15 to $30 billion. They're not really sure how much in the end. And they're only going to build a wall on one border and leave 3 other borders open. If a cartoonist made a cartoon out of it, it would be blatantly obvious how foolish and stupid and short-sighted that is. You can't build a wall if you only build a wall on one side of a box. That's not you could just go around it.
Well, it doesn't make any sense. I mean, it's really what I get from the more right-wing types in my neck of the woods is that, of course, it doesn't work, but it's a thumb in the eye of the liberal. It's a thumb in the eye of these people who think that we can just let anyone come here. What they're saying is that we want people to come here as long as, they're not brown or
Give
black
us your
or
poor.
yellow.
Give us your poor. You're tired. Your huddled masses yearning to breathe free. I hold my lamp beside the golden door. I mean,
but a $250,000 fee, and we'll fast track your visa.
Oh, $600,000. They were selling $600,000.
That's right, $600,000. The Kushner's family.
Yes.
To Chinese nationals.
I'm pretty sure that that's a felony to try to sell a visa when you're not a member of the State Department.
Yes. And in fact, I think if you're a member of the State Department, you really can't be selling visa fast tracks for $600,000 either. And what was funny is that it was in an open forum where they invited the press. I mean, what's up? This is what I'm understanding too, is that they have been so insulated in their. And this may sound like hyperbole, but just bear with me here. The real estate business in New York is pretty mobbed up, especially on the commercial scale. And so the way that business is done, I mean, you become inured to it. And so then you forget about how the rest of the world is that has like laws. And so they brazenly go into an open forum and say, oh yeah, 600,000, we'll fast track this, and as if nothing's wrong. And my joke is that, they want to run, government like a mob business. Well, it can't be run by like any kind of business, but certainly not a mob one. So
I've been hearing my whole life from Republican Party how we need businessmen in the White House. We need a businessman running the country, which is completely idiotic. The nation is not a business. I understand that our economy is a capitalistic economy, and it was one since the beginning of the nation. But what these nincompoops fail to recognize, I guess because most of them have never once bothered to read the Constitution, which is not all that long. It takes about 15 minutes to read the whole entire thing. I have my little ACLU pocket Constitution that I've been carrying around for more than 15 years, and I know most of it by heart. These people, they are invested in politics and business, and they have failed to read the founding document that guides it all. That the word business does not exist in the Constitution. The words taxes and tariffs, they're in there. The word abortion, not in the Constitution. Before the year 1800, the federal government passed a law and required that sailors on sailing ships have accidental dismemberment insurance. So if they got damaged while they're working on the ship, they would have a place to go to get medical care afterwards. Guess what that sounds like? Single-payer universal health care.
It does.
Before the year 1800.
No, whenever they would talk about businessmen, I mean, they'd think of like a Hoover who, had ties to Wall Street or whatnot. But really, the only true businessman that I, that I can think of would be Truman. I mean, he was a shopkeeper. And he didn't run government like a business.
He was a small businessman. That's a difference. Because a small business is quite like a nation. Right? It has one leader. It has one mission, and it has to negotiate with everybody around it. That is kind of like a country. But a big business, a corporation, that's not like a company. I mean, that's not like a country, because in a country you have laws that everybody has to abide by equally, right? In a business, whoever's on top gets to make the laws. Okay, that's exactly what Trump's trying to do. The guy comes into office and he talks to the DNI, the head of the NSA, and the head of the FBI, all privately, and ask the heads of all three of these agencies to come on, be loyal to me, and let's forget about all this Trump-Russia business. Let's just let that go.
Well, I never wanted to run. I never ever wanted to run any of my businesses like I was told when I'd be working for people, and invariably everybody that I worked for would say, "This is not a democracy. This is a dictatorship." And then I would hear Republicans say, "We want the government to be run like a business." And I go, "They want it to be run like a dictatorship." And that's that's what they're running right now, or think they can do.
No, they didn't even reach that high with this guy. What they're running now is a third world country banana republic.
Yeah, that's where we are. Well, Angie, we've reached the end of our broadcast period for the day, so we'll have to revisit all of this next week. Of course, it'll be old news, and we'll be on to something else. So,
I'm sure there'll be some more bombshell revelations between now and then.
There certainly will. Oh, I just wanted to tell you that I hope the orb is with you.
The bat signal.
Oh my God. Okay.
That's what I thought when I saw it.
Okay. Thanks so much for today, and we'll see you next week.
Okay, bye.
Okay, folks, got to get out of here. You know, it is Wednesday, so tonight that's Jibber Your Jabber with Wink, a 1 hour or 2 hour opportunity for live call-in radio, and that begins at 9 p.m. on the West Coast, midnight on the East Coast, and we'll be playing the Antibalas Afrobeat Orchestra's Battle of the Species in the interim before Hartman. There's been something going on with our PV channel feed, so if it cuts out, refresh your browser. I don't know if it's because of that solar activity that was forecast to happen during this period or what, but something's been going on with them for the last couple of days, so just bear with us and we'll make sure that handshake connects. All right, so stay listening to Netroots Radio 24/7, 365. Why? Well, because who loves you, baby? Okay, Wink, see you on the other side.
All right, we're out.